She looked at his worn-out shoes and laughed in his face. You expect to date me? A CEO? You're just a janitor with a kid. Victoria Street. Claire thought she was wasting her time on a blind date with a nobody. She didn't know that the man sitting across from her, Liam Harper, wasn't just a struggling single dad. He was a ghost from a world she couldn't imagine. And exactly 12 minutes after she walked out on him, staring death in the face, she would realize that the loser she just humiliated was the only thing standing between her and a gruesome end. This is the story of how a broken heart and a hidden past collided in the most dangerous way possible. The reservations at Lucier were impossible to get. It was the kind of place where the water cost more than a tank of gas, and the silence was heavy with judgment. For Victoria Street, Claire, CEO of Xanath Heavy Industries, it was just another Tuesday for Liam Harper. It was a minefield. Liam adjusted the collar of his suit. It was charcoal gray, purchased at a thrift store 3 years ago for a funeral. It was clean, pressed, and respectable, but under the crystal chandeliers of Lille, it looked like a costume. Clear's throat. He checked his watch. A rugged, scratched, tactical piece that looked laughably out of place against the fine linen tablecloth. Daddy, you look like a prince, his 6-year-old daughter, Maya, had told him an hour ago as she fixed his crooked tie with her small, sticky hands. He held on to that memory now like a lifeline. He wasn't here for himself. He was here because his aunt, who worked as a housekeeper for the St. Clair estate, had begged him to go. She claimed Victoria needed a real man, not the corporate shark she usually dated. Liam needed a miracle to pay for Mir's upcoming surgery. And while he'd never asked for money, his aunt had insisted that meeting people in high places couldn't hurt. So here he was, a former elite combat engineer turned high school maintenance man, waiting for a woman who appeared on the cover of Forbes while he was unclogging toilets. At 7:15 p.m., the Clear's throat atmosphere in the restaurant shifted, heads turned. A hush fell over the room, rippling outward from the entrance. Victoria Street. Claire had arrived. She was striking, sharp enough to cut glass. She wore a crimson dress that screamed power, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. She didn't walk, she marched, phone pressed to her ear, barking orders about stock prices and hostile takeovers. She reached the table, ended the call without a goodbye, and sat down, dropping her platinum clutch onto the table with a clatter. She looked at Liam, Clear's throat. Her eyes scanned him, from his scuffed shoes to his nervous smile, the assessment taking less than a second. The verdict was written plainly on her face. Disappointment. You're Liam, she. Clear's throat said. It wasn't a question, it was an accusation. Miss Street. Claire. It's a pleasure, Liam said, extending a hand. She didn't take it, she picked up the menu instead. Let's make this quick. My mother set this up. I promised her an hour. I'm giving you 20 minutes. Liam slowly lowered his hand, his jaw tightening. He had faced warlords and devised bombs with shaking hands. Yet this woman's dismissal stung in a way he hadn't expected. Fair enough, he said softly. I'm not exactly comfortable here either. Clearly, Victoria scoffed, signaling a waiter. A bottle of the 98 Pinot, and bring out him a Clear's throat beer. Whatever you have on tap. I'll have water, actually, Liam corrected politely. I have to drive my daughter to school in the morning. Victoria finally lowered the menu, staring at him with cold amusement. Ah, right, the single dad angle. My mother mentioned that. Cute. Do you think that makes you sensitive? Attractive? I think it makes me a father, Liam said, his voice steady. Look, Miss Street, Claire, I know we're from different worlds. I work in maintenance at Northwood High. I'm not here to get your money or your pity. I agreed to this because maintenance, she interrupted, a cruel smirk playing on her lips. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper that carried to the nearby tables. You're a janitor. Let's call it what it is. You clean up other people's messes. The couple at the next table giggled. Liam felt the heat rise in his neck. There is dignity in all work, Victoria. There is ambition and there is settling, she counted, her voice icy. I run a billion-dollar defense contracting firm. I deal with generals, senators, and innovators. What could we possibly talk about? Which mop bucket has the best aerodynamics? Liam looked down at his hands. Hands that were calloused and scarred, hands that had dismantled IEDs in the pouring rain to save a convoy of refugees. He took a breath. We could talk about loyalty, sacrifice, or maybe just basic manners. Victoria laughed. It was a harsh, brittle sound. Manners are for people who have time to waste. I don't. You're here because you're looking for a savior. A stepmom to pay the bills. I see it in your cheap suit, Liam. It smells like desperation. She stood up, tossing a $100 bill onto his empty plate. For your time, she clears throat, said dismissively. And for the water. Don't wait up. I have a company to run. Liam stared at the money. The humiliation burned, clears throat, but underneath it his instincts flared. As Victoria turned to leave, he noticed something. Not her rudeness, but her movement. She was favoring her left side. And when she checked her phone, her pupils were dilated despite the bright lights. She was exhausted, erratic. Victoria, he called out, standing up. She spun around annoyed. What? You shouldn't take the elevator, he said, his voice dropping into a register he hadn't used in years, the command voice. The service light on the panel was flickering when I came in. It's an older hydraulic system. With the storm pressure tonight, the sensors might be glitchy. Victoria stared at him incredulous. Are you giving me technical advice now? Stick to plunging toilets, Liam. I think I can handle an elevator. She turned on her heel and stormed towards the private glass elevator that led to the penthouse garage. Liam watched her go, a sinking feeling in his gut that had nothing to do with the rejection. He grabbed the $100 bill and left it as a tip for the stunned waiter. He didn't leave the building. He walked towards the stairwell, his senses on high alert. He couldn't explain it, maybe it was the years in the field. But the air felt wrong, too heavy. The private elevator at Liar was a marvel of modern engineering, a glass tube that ran up the exterior of the skyscraper, offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. It was reserved for VIPs. Tonight it was Victoria's escape pod from a date that made her skin crawl. She stepped inside and punched the button for the parking garage. The doors slid shut, sealing out the hum of the restaurant. She leaned her head against the cool glass, closing her eyes. Her heart was pounding. She hated being cruel. She really did. But Preston Calloway, her chief rival at Calloway Corp., was circling her company like a shark. Her board of directors was meeting tomorrow to vote on her removal. She had to be tough. She had to be unbreakable. A janitor with a sob story was just a distraction she couldn't afford. He had nice eyes, though, a traitorous voice whispered in her mind. Sad, protective eyes. Stop it, she muttered to herself. The elevator hummed smoothly, descending past the 40th floor, then the 30th. At the 25th floor, the world ended. There was no warning screech, no alarm, just a violent bone-rattling crack that sounded like a gunshot amplified by a megaphone. The smooth descent turned into a sickening freefall. Victoria screamed, her body weightless for a terrifying second. She was thrown upward, slamming hard against the ceiling of the cab before crashing down to the floor as the emergency brakes kicked in. Screech, grind. The elevator jerked to a violent halt. Sparks showered down from the ceiling panel. The lights died, replaced by the flickering red strobe of the emergency backup. Victoria lay on the floor, gasping for air. Her ankle throbbed with white-hot agony. Broken. Definitely broken. Her head was spinning. Hello, she rasped, reaching for the emergency intercom. Help. I'm stuck. Static. Dead silence. She grabbed her phone. No signal. The glass shaft was reinforced with a metallic mesh that acted like a Faraday cage, blocking reception. She looked out the glass. She was dangling between floors, suspended 20 stories up in the night sky. Then she heard it, a groaning sound from above, the cable. Ping. The sound of a steel strand snapping echoed through the shaft. The car lurched downward another foot. Victoria scrambled into the corner, sobbing. She was the CEO of a tech giant, a woman who controlled billions, and she was going to die in a glass box alone. Inside the stairwell, 3 floors up, Liam froze. He heard the impact. He knew exactly what that sound was. It wasn't just a mechanical failure. It was the sound of a primary brake line shearing. He didn't think. He didn't hesitate. The janitor vanished. In his place stood Sergeant Harper. He kicked open the stairwell door to the 28th floor, sprinting towards the maintenance access panel he had noted earlier, a habit he could never shake. A security guard stepped in his front of him. Sir, you can't be back here. This is restricted. Elevator failure. South shaft. 1 civilian trapped. The brakes are slipping. Liam barked. The authority in his voice was so absolute that the guard froze. Give me your radio and get the fire department now. The guard handed it over, bewildered. Who are you? Nobody, Liam said. He grabbed a fire axe from the wall cabinet and ran toward the elevator access doors. He reached the sliding doors on the 28th floor. They were sealed shut. Through the crack, he could see the dark void of the shaft. He wedged the axe blade into the seam and heaved. His biceps strained, the cheap fabric of his thrift store suit tearing at the seams. With a roar of effort, he forced the doors open. He looked down. The car was stuck 3 floors down, tilted at a precarious angle. He could see the sparks raining down on top of it. He could hear the cable groaning, a sound like a dying whale. "Victoria," he shouted down the shaft. His voice echoed deep and commanding. Inside the car, Victoria lifted her head. She was bleeding from a cut on her forehead. "Help me, please. It's slipping." "Stay still," Liam yelled. "Don't move a muscle. The counterweight is unstable." He looked around. Claire's throat needed a rope, a harness. He had nothing but a fire hose in a glass cabinet nearby. It would have to do. He smashed the glass, unspooling the heavy canvas hose. He tied it rapidly around a structural pillar, testing the knot with a sharp tug. It was a bowline, tied with the speed of a man who had done it under fire. He looped the other end around his waist. "Sir, the fire department is 10 minutes out," the guard yelled, running back. "She doesn't have 10 minutes, Liam said grimly, looking at the main cable housing. It was vibrating. "That cable snaps in 60 seconds. Liam Harper, the man Victoria had mocked for cleaning up messes, stepped onto the ledge of the open shaft. He looked down at the 20-story drop. He thought of Mara. "I promised I'd come home." But he also saw the woman in the red dress, terrified and alone. "Hold the line," Liam told the guard. And then he jumped. He slid down the fire hose, the canvas burning his palms, using his legs to break against the guide rails. He landed with a heavy thud on the roof of the elevator car. The car screamed, metal grinding on metal, and dropped another 6 in. "Oh God," Victoria screamed from inside. Liam lay flat on the roof to distribute his weight. He found the emergency hatch. It was jammed. Of course it was. "Victoria, listen to me," Liam shouted through the metal. "I'm coming in. Cover your face." He stood up, balancing on the tilting roof, raised the heavy fire axe he dragged down with him, and brought it down on the latch mechanism. Once, twice, the metal sheared. He ripped the hatch open and dropped into the car. Victoria was huddled in the corner, shaking uncontrollably. She looked up, expecting a firefighter. When she saw Liam, his suit jacket gone, his white shirt torn and stained with grease, the fire axe in his hand, her eyes went wide. "You," she whispered. "Me," Liam said. He didn't look at her. He was looking at the ceiling. The sound of the cable snapping was getting louder. Snap, snap, snap. "We have to go now," Liam said. He reached for her. "I can't walk," she sobbed. "My ankle." Liam dropped the axe. He knelt in front of her. "Victoria, look at me." She looked. The nervousness, the awkwardness from the dinner table was gone. His eyes were hard, focused, and intensely blue. He looked like a warrior. "I am going to carry you," he said. "But you have to trust me." "Do you trust me?" Victoria looked at the man she had called a loser 20 minutes ago. The man who had just jumped down an elevator shaft to save her. "Yes," she choked out. He scooped her up as if she weighed nothing. He wrapped her arms around his neck. "Hold on tight." He grabbed the fire hose dangling through the open hatch. He wrapped his legs around it, locking his boots. "Hold your breath," he whispered. He began to climb, hand over hand, lifting his own weight and hers. It was a feat of strength that should have been impossible, fueled by pure adrenaline. They were halfway out of the car, suspended in the open shaft when the final cable snapped. The sound of the elevator car hitting the bottom of the shaft was not a crash. It was an explosion of sound that vibrated through the very marrow of Victoria's bones. A massive gust of displaced air. A piston-like blast of wind and dust shot up the shaft. "Hold on," Liam roared, burying his face into her shoulder to shield her from the debris. He wrapped his legs tighter around the fire hose, his boots locking together in a J-hook clamp, a technique drilled into him during mountain warfare training. The hose snapped taut, vibrating violently like a plucked guitar string. Liam's arms bulged, the veins standing out like steel cables as he bore the combined weight of 2 adults against the shockwave. Victoria screamed, but the sound was lost in the cacophony of twisting metal below. For 3 seconds, they swung wildly in the dark, suspended over the wreckage. Sparks danced in the air like fireflies, illuminating the sweat dripping from Liam's jaw. "I've got you," he gritted out, his voice close to her ear. It was the only steady thing in a world turned upside down. "Don't look down. Look at me." Victoria stared into his eyes. They weren't the eyes of a janitor. They were the eyes of a man who had stared down death 100 times and refused to blink. In that terrifying moment, hanging in the abyss, the arrogant CEO vanished. She was just a woman, and he was the only thing keeping her from oblivion. "Pull us up," the security guard shouted from the open doors above, his voice cracking with panic. Liam didn't wait for help. With a grunt of exertion that sounded like an animal growl, he began to haul them up the last few feet. His muscles seized, screaming in protest. But he didn't stop until he hooked an arm over the ledge of the 28th floor. Strong hands grabbed Victoria, dragging her onto the carpeted hallway. Liam vaulted up after her, rolling onto his back, gasping for air. Victoria lay on the floor, her expensive crimson dress torn and covered in grease, her chest heaved. She turned her head to look at him. Liam was staring at the ceiling, his chest rising and falling rhythmically. His hands, the hands she had mocked, were raw and bleeding from the friction of the canvas hose. "You," Victoria whispered, her voice trembling. "You saved me." Liam sat up, wincing. He didn't smile. He immediately went into assessment mode. He crawled over to her, ignoring his own bleeding palms. "Pupils are equal and reactive," he muttered, checking her eyes. He gently palpated her ankle. "Tib-fib fracture. Painful, but not life-threatening. Any pain in your neck or back?" "No," she stammered, stunned by his clinical efficiency. "Allium, how did you know? How did you know to do all that?" Before he could answer, the stairwell doors burst open. Firefighters swarmed the hallway, their radios chirping. Paramedics rushed toward Victoria. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" a paramedic shouted, pushing Liam aside to get to the VIP. Liam stood up slowly. He backed away, melting into the shadows. He saw the flash of cameras from the paparazzi who had somehow already breached the lower levels. He saw the police arriving. He couldn't be here. If he was on the news, if his face was plastered on TV as a hero, the people he had been hiding from for 6 years might see him. And if they found him, they would find Maya. He looked at Victoria one last time. Clear's throat. She was being lifted onto a stretcher, distracted by the chaos. "Take care of yourself, Victoria," he whispered. He turned and walked towards the service stairwell, the one the staff used. He limped down 28 flights of stairs, slipped out the back delivery exit, and disappeared into the rainy night. When Victoria finally sat up on the stretcher, pushing the oxygen mask away to look for him, the hallway was empty. "Where is he?" she demanded, grabbing the security guard's arm. "Where is the man who saved me?" The guard looked around, bewildered. "I don't know, Miss Sinclair. He just vanished." Victoria looked down at her hand. She was clutching something. In the chaos, she had grabbed the lapel of his torn shirt. There, pinned to the tattered fabric, was a small, cheap plastic pin. It was a smiley face with a missing eye. It was a child's toy. She squeezed it tight, a knot of guilt forming in her stomach that hurt worse than her broken ankle. 3 days later, Victoria Street. Claire sat in her penthouse suite, her leg encased in a heavy cast. Her living room looked like a command center. 3 laptops were open, and her head of security, a gruff former FBI agent named IAS Thorne, was standing nervously by the window. "You're telling me he doesn't exist?" Victoria asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "I'm telling you, he's a ghost, Miss Street." "Claire," Thorne said, tossing a thin file onto the coffee table. "Liam Harper, hired by Northwood High School 8 months ago as a custodian. Before that, nothing. No credit history, no social media presence, no rental agreements in his name. He pays cash for everything. He drives a 2010 sedan registered to a John Doe trust." Victoria picked up the file. It contained a photocopy of his driver's license. Liam looked tired in the photo, unsealing. A man doesn't just rappel down an elevator shaft using a fire hose and a bowline knot because he watches action movies, Elias, Victoria said, tapping the photo. He knew the structural integrity of the cable. He knew the medical protocols. He hacked a hydraulic hatch with a fire axe in 3 swings. "Find out who he really is." "I did find one thing," Thorne said hesitantly. "The school has him listed as a single parent. Emergency contact is a local pediatric hospital, St. Jude's ward." Victoria froze. "The cancer ward." "No." Thorne shook his head. "Cardiology. His daughter Maya. She's 6. She has a congenital heart defect. Hypoplastic left heart syndrome." The room went silent. The air conditioning hummed, sounding like the elevator shaft wind in Victoria's memories. She thought back to the dinner. "I have to drive my daughter to school. I'm not here for your money." She had called him a gold digger. She had laughed at his cheap suit. A suit he probably wore because every spare dime went to keeping his little girl's heart beating. "Oh God," Victoria whispered, covering her mouth. The shame was a physical weight crushing her chest. She remembered the plastic pin, the smiley face. It wasn't a fashion statement. It was a gift from his daughter. "For," she said, her voice sharp with a new kind of determination. "Get the car, the SUV. I don't care about the doctor's orders." "Where are we going, boss?" "We're going to Northwood High School." Northwood High was a sprawling brick building in the working-class district of the city. It was a far cry from the glass towers of downtown. Victoria hobbled out of the black SUV on her crutches, ignoring the stares of the students leaving for the day. She found him in the gymnasium. The basketball team was practicing, sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. Liam was up on a ladder, fixing a stuck net on the hoop. He wore gray coveralls with his name stitched on the pocket. He looked exhausted. He moved stiffly, favoring his right shoulder. An injury from the elevator, she realized with a pang of guilt. She watched him for a moment. He wasn't just fixing the net. He was talking to the players below, tossing the ball back with a perfect spin, laughing at a joke a teenager made. He was kind, even here, doing a job she had called cleaning up messes. He was dignified. "Liam," she clears throat called out. The sound of her voice made him freeze. He gripped the ladder, his knuckles turning white. He didn't look down immediately. He took a long breath as if bracing for an impact. Slowly, he descended the ladder. He turned to face her. He looked wary, defensive. "Miss Street, Claire, you shouldn't be walking on that leg. I have excellent doctors," she said, hobbling closer. The gym went quiet. The students were whispering, recognizing the famous CEO. "Can we talk?" she asked privately. Liam wiped his grease-stained hands on a rag. "I'm on the clock, Victoria. I have 3 classrooms to sweep and a boiler to check. Unlike you, I don't set my own hours." The sting was deserved. Victoria took it. "Please," she said. She lowered her guard, letting the imperious CEO mask slip. "I need to return something to you." She held out her hand. In her palm sat the cheap plastic smiley face pin. Liam's expression softened instantly. He reached out and took the pin, his fingers brushing hers. His skin was rough, warm, and calloused. "Maya gave me this for luck before the date," he said quietly, looking at the pin. "I thought I lost it." "It worked," Victoria said. "It saved my life." "Well, that and you. I did what anyone would do." "No, Liam, you did what you could do. Most men would have run." She took a step closer. "I looked into you, Liam." His eyes hardened instantly. The warmth evaporated. "I value my privacy, Victoria. If you sent your goons to dig through my life, I know about Maya," she interrupted softly. Liam stopped. The air seemed to leave his lungs. He looked around to make sure no one was close enough to hear. He stepped in close to her, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. "Don't you dare say her name," he clears throat hissed. "You don't know anything about my life. I know she's sick," Victoria pressed on, undeterred by his anger because she saw the fear behind it. "I know she needs a valve replacement surgery that your insurance won't cover because it's experimental. I know it costs $200,000 and I know that's why you agreed to meet me. Not for a lifestyle, for her life." Liam looked away, his jaw working. The shame on his face was heartbreaking. He was a proud man, a capable man reduced to begging by a broken medical system. "She's my world," Liam said, his voice cracking. I used to be someone who could fix anything. I built bridges in Kandahar. I disarmed bombs that were wired to blow up schools. But I can't fix her heart. I can't fix this." Tears welled in Victoria's eyes. This man who had held her over an abyss was drowning. "Liam," she said firmly. "You saved my life. Now let me save hers." He shook his head. "I don't want your charity, Victoria. I saw how you looked at me at that restaurant. I'm just the janitor to you." "I was wrong," she said fiercely. "I was an arrogant, judgmental fool. You are the most incredible man I have ever met. Please let me pay for the surgery. Not as charity, as a debt of honor." Liam looked at her. He searched her face for any sign of deception, any sign of the mockery she had shown before. He saw only sincerity and regret. "I can't pay you back," he said hoarsely. "You already have," she replied. Just then, the gym doors banged open. A man in a dark suit walked in. It wasn't one of Victoria's security team. It was a process server. "Liam Harper," the man called out. Liam stiffened. "Yes, The man walked over and shoved a thick envelope into Liam's chest. Served. Custody hearing. Your late wife's parents are filing for full custody of Maya. They claim you are financially unstable and unfit to provide for her medical needs due to your current employment status. Liam went pale. The envelope fell from his hand to the floor. No, he whispered. They can't take her. Victoria watched the color drain from his face. She looked at the envelope, then at the man who had just saved her life, now crumbling under a new threat. She reached down, picked up the envelope, and dusted it off. She turned to the process server, her eyes flashing with the cold, ruthless fire that had made her a CEO. You can tell the grandparents, Victoria said, her voice echoing in the silent gym, that Mr. Harper is not financially unstable. In fact, he was just hired as the chief security officer for Zenith Heavy Industries. Starting salary $500,000 a year. Liam's head snapped up. Victoria, what? She silenced him with a look. She turned back to the server. Now get out of my sight before I buy your law firm and turn it into a parking lot. The server scrambled away. Liam stared at her, stunned. You can't just say that. It's a lie. It's not a lie if you say yes, Victoria said, her heart pounding. I need someone I can trust, Liam. Someone who can see the cracks in the system before they break. I need you, and Maya needs you to have this job. She held out her hand again. So, Mr. Harper, do we have a deal? Liam looked at her hand. Then he looked at the gym at the mop bucket in the corner. He thought of Maya smiling in her hospital bed. He reached out and took Victoria's hand. Deal. But as they shook hands, neither of them noticed the black sedan parked across the street or the telephoto lens aimed directly at them through the gym window. The click of the shutter was silent, but the image it captured would bring a storm of chaos that neither of them was ready for. The transition from the boiler room to the boardroom was jarring. Liam stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling mirror in his new office on the 50th floor of Zenith Heavy Industries. The suit he wore now wasn't from a thrift store. It was bespoke Italian wool tailored to hide the holster under his left arm and the scars on his chest. He didn't feel like an executive. He felt like an imposter in a golden cage. You're pacing, Victoria said, leaning against his doorframe. She was healing. Her cast replaced by a walking boot, but the stress lines around her eyes were deepening. I'm checking the perimeter, Liam corrected, stopping by the window. Your security protocols are a joke, Victoria. I found 3 active listening devices in the conference room this morning. 2 were standard corporate espionage bugs. The third, he reached into his pocket and tossed a tiny sophisticated microchip onto the mahogany desk. The third was military-grade Russian manufacturer, the kind used by black ops contractors. Victoria picked up the chip, her face pale. Who? I don't know yet, Liam said, his voice grim. But whoever sabotaged that elevator didn't just want to scare you. They wanted you gone, and now I'm the one standing between them and you. For the last week, Liam had been a whirlwind. He had fired the entire night security team after catching them sleeping. He had re-encrypted the servers using algorithms he'd learned from NSA spooks in Carbell. The whispers in the break room had shifted from who is the janitor to don't mess with the new chief. But the real threat wasn't inside the building. Later that afternoon, the storm broke. Liam was in the middle of a briefing with Elias Thorne when his phone buzzed. It was a notification from a gossip site. Then another. Then his email exploded. Scandal at Zenith. CEO hires lover boy janitor as security chief. Exclusive photos. The hero who cleaned toilets now cleans out company coffers. Liam stared at the screen. There was the photo from the gym. Victoria holding his hand looking intimate. The article was vicious. It painted Victoria as an unstable woman thinking with her heart and Liam as a con artist preying on her vulnerability. It mentioned his financial struggles. It mentioned Maya. Turn on the TV, Thorne said quietly. On the business news channel, Preston Calloway, the CEO of rival firm Calloway Corp., was giving an interview. He looked slick, reptilian. It's a tragedy really, Calloway said, feigning concern. Victoria Street. Claire is a brilliant woman, but clearly the stress has gotten to her, entrusting the security of defense contracts to a man whose previous qualification was mopping floors. It's reckless. The shareholders should be terrified. Liam slammed his laptop shut. He's coming for you. No, Victoria said, walking into the room, her tablet in hand. He's coming for us. The board just called an emergency vote of no confidence. It's scheduled for tomorrow morning. If I lose, I'm out as CEO. And if I'm out, your contract is void. Liam felt a cold pit in his stomach. If his contract was void, he had no income, no insurance. And there's more, Victoria said, her voice shaking. Callaway is funding your in-law's legal team. The grandparents filed an emergency injunction an hour ago. Injunction for what? Liam asked, dread pooling in his veins. To stop Mir's surgery, Victoria whispered. They are claiming that the surgery is too risky and that you, as an unstable parent, currently embroiled in a corporate fraud scandal, do not have the right to authorize it. They want to put her in a state facility. Liam didn't speak. The air in the room seemed to vanish. The corporate attacks, the insults, the photos. He could handle all of that. But Maya, he walked over to the window, looking out at the city that suddenly felt like a battlefield. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a rage so pure and white-hot it terrified him. They want a war, Liam said, his voice dropping to a subsonic rumble. They think I'm just a janitor. They think I'm just a guy in a suit. He turned back to Victoria. The look in his eyes made Elias Thorne, a veteran FBI agent, take a step back. Victoria, give me access to the archives. Everything on Callaway. Everything on the board members. Liam, what are you going to do? I'm going to do what I did in the sandbox, Liam said coldly. I'm going to clear the minefield by detonating it. The morning of the board meeting, the sky was a bruised purple, heavy with rain. The conference room at Zenith Heavy Industries was filled with 12 people who held the fate of the company and Liam's life in their hands. At the head of the table sat Arthur Pendleton, the chairman clears throat of the board. He was an old money type, easily swayed by stock prices and bad press. Next to him, surprisingly, sat Preston Callaway. He wasn't a board member, but as a major shareholder, he had invited himself as an concerned observer. Victoria sat at the other end, looking regal, but isolated. Liam stood behind her, silent, wearing his dark suit-like armor. This is a farce, Victoria, Pendleton began, tossing a stack of tabloids onto the table. Stock is down 14% since this man was hired. We are a defense contractor. We deal with classified government intel. And you hire a custodian as CSO. It's negligent. Mr. Harper saved my life, Victoria said, her voice steady. Which makes him a hero, perhaps, Callaway interjected smoothly. But it doesn't make him qualified to run cybersecurity for a billion-dollar firm. Let's be honest, he's a charity case, a liability. Callaway turned to Liam, a smirk on his face. No offense, Mr. Harper, I'm sure you're excellent at maintenance. Liam didn't flinch, he didn't even blink. He walked over to the main screen projector. May I? Liam asked. This is highly irregular, Pendleton huffed. You want to talk about qualifications? Liam said, plugging in a heavily encrypted flash drive. Let's talk about them. Clear's throat, the screen flickered to life. It wasn't a resume. It was a redacted government file. The seal of the Department of Defense was visible, stamped with top secret honorar clearance level 5. My name is Sergeant First Class Liam Harper, Liam began, his voice projecting clearly. 12th Combat Engineer Battalion, Specializations, Counterterrorism, Structural Demolition, and Cyber Warfare Integration. The room went silent. Callaway's smirk faltered. I didn't just fix toilets. Liam continued, clicking a remote. Images appeared on the screen. Satellite photos of a fortified compound. I designed the security grid for the U.S. Embassy in Benghazi after the attacks. I wrote the encryption protocol for the drone program you currently sell to the Navy. He looked at Pendleton. You're using my code, sir. You have been for 5 years. I wrote it in a bunker in 2019. Pendleton's jaw dropped. You wrote the Aegis protocol. I did, Liam said, before I retired to take care of my dying wife and daughter. I took the job at the school because it was the only place close to the hospital that allowed me to leave at a moment's notice if Maya crashed. I chose janitor because I didn't want attention. I wanted peace. He turned his gaze to Callaway. The predator was now the prey. But Mr. Callaway disrupted my peace, Liam said softly, so I looked into yours. Liam clicked the remote again. The screen changed. It showed a bank transfer, a massive one. From a shell company in the Cayman Islands to a mechanic shop in downtown. This is a payment made 3 days before the elevator failure. Liam narrated. The recipient is the maintenance tech who serviced the elevator at Lyle. The payment came from Blue Horizon Holdings. Liam clicked again. And here are the incorporation papers for Blue Horizon Holdings, the sole beneficiary. The screen displayed a signature, Preston Callaway. Gasps erupted around the table. Victoria looked at Liam, her eyes wide with awe. He hadn't just defended himself. He had brought a nuclear weapon to a knife fight. This proves, Liam said, his voice hard as iron, that the elevator failure wasn't an accident. It was attempted corporate manslaughter. Mr. Calloway tried to kill your CEO to trigger a stock drop, allowing him to buy Zenith at a discount. Calloway stood up, knocking his chair over. This is a lie. These are forged. They are verified by the FBI Cyber Division. Liam said calmly. Agent Thorne sent them over 5 minutes ago. The police are waiting in the lobby. Preston clears throat. Calloway looked at the door. He looked at the window. He was trapped. You're just a janitor, Calloway screamed, losing his composure completely. And you, Liam said, stepping closer, looming over the smaller man, are under arrest. Security guards, Liam's new hires, loyal and vetted, burst into the room. They didn't go for Victoria. They went straight for Calloway, handcuffing him as he shouted obscenities. As he was dragged out, the boardroom was deathly silent. Arthur Pendleton cleared his throat. He looked at Liam with a mixture of fear and respect. Mr. Harper, it seems we misjudged the situation. You think, Victoria said dryly. Now, if we are done here, Mr. Harper has a prior engagement, and so do I. Victoria stood up and walked to Liam. She didn't care about the board members watching. She took his hand. Let's go, she said. Where? To court, she replied. We have a custody hearing to win, and I think the judge will be very interested to know that the grandparents are being funded by a man currently in custody for attempted murder. The courtroom was a sterile, cold place, smelling of floor wax and old paper. The Harrison family, Mears' maternal grandparents, sat on the left. They were wealthy, cold people who had never approved of their daughter marrying a soldier. When Liam walked in, flanking Victoria, the Harrisons looked smug. Their lawyer, a shark named Mr. Sterling, stood up. Your Honor, Sterling began. The father is unemployed, living in a one-bedroom apartment, and is currently the subject of a humiliating tabloid scandal. We have evidence he is relying on a sugar mama for support. This is an unfit environment for a sick child. The judge, a stern woman with glasses, looked at Liam. Mr. Harper, do you have a response? Liam stood up. He didn't look at the lawyer. He looked at the Harrisons. I love my daughter. I have spent every waking moment keeping her alive. Love doesn't pay for heart surgery, Mr. Harper. The grandmother snapped. You can't even afford rent. Actually, Victoria stood up, her voice ringing out. I am representing Mr. Harper's employer, Zenith Heavy Industries. She handed a file to the bailiff. Mr. Harper is the chief security officer of our firm. His annual salary is $500,000 with full stock options and comprehensive medical insurance that covers 100% of congenital defects. He has also been awarded a $2 million bonus for exposing corporate espionage and saving the company from a hostile takeover. The funds were deposited into his trust this morning. The judge raised her eyebrows, reviewing the documents. This seems to be in order. The insurance covers the surgery. Fully, Your Honor, Victoria said. It is scheduled for tomorrow at St. Jude's. The lawyer, Sterling, deflated. But the scandal, the judge interrupted, appears to be the result of the criminal actions of a third party for which an arrest has already been made. I watched the news counselor. The judge banged her gavel in light of the father's stable employment, financial solvency, and the evident malicious intent behind the opposing counsel's funding. I am dismissing the petition for custody. Maya Harper stays with her father. Liam let out a breath he felt like he had been holding for 6 years. He slumped back into his chair, covering his face with his hands. Victoria put a hand on his shoulder, squeezing tight. We did it, she whispered. But the battle wasn't over. The surgery was tomorrow. The hardest part was yet to come. As they walked out of the courthouse, the paparazzi were there again. But this time, Liam didn't hide. He walked out with his head high, Victoria by his side. Mr. Harper, is it true you're a secret agent? A reporter shouted. Liam stopped. He looked at the camera. I'm a father, he said simply, and I'm a janitor. I clean up messes. That's all you need to know. He helped Victoria into the car. As the door closed, shielding them from the flashbulbs, Victoria turned to him. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a raw electric tension between them. You were amazing in there, she said. I had help, Liam replied. He looked at her. Really looked at her. Why did you do all this, Victoria? You risked your company. You risked your reputation. Victoria reached out, touching the side of his face. Her fingers traced the scar on his jaw. Because you saved me when I was falling, Liam, and because she hesitated, her eyes searching his. Because I think I'm falling again. And this time, I don't want a rope. Liam leaned in. The distance between them closed. It was a moment of pure magnetic pull, but before their lips could touch, Liam's phone rang. It was the harsh, shrill ringtone reserved for the hospital. Liam pulled back, his face instantly pale. He answered, "Hello, this is Liam." He listened for a second, his phone slipped from his hand, tumbling to the floor of the limo. "Liam." Victoria grabbed his arm. "What is it?" Liam looked at her. His eyes wide with terror. "It's Maya, her heart. She went into cardiac arrest. They're rushing her into surgery now." The drive to St. Jude's Hospital was a blur of rain streets and red lights, ignored by the driver. For the first time since the elevator shaft, Liam Harper wasn't the soldier or the protector. He was just a terrified father. His hands, usually so steady they could defuse a bomb with seconds on the clock, were trembling uncontrollably in his lap. Victoria didn't say a word. She didn't offer empty platitudes like, "It will be okay." Instead, she gripped his hand with a strength that surprised him, anchoring him to the present moment. She was on her phone with her other hand, but she wasn't checking stocks. She was calling the hospital board. "I don't care about the protocol," she snapped into the phone, her voice icy and authoritative. "Dr. Aris is the best pediatric heart surgeon on the East Coast. Get him. I'll send my helicopter to pick him up from the Hamptons. If he's on a golf course, drag him off it. Maya Harper is on the table in 20 minutes, and I want him holding the scalpel." She hung up and looked at Liam. "He's coming." Clear's throat. Liam looked at her, his eyes red-rimmed. "You don't have to do this, Victoria. The court case is over. You won. You don't owe me anything else." "Shut up, Liam," she said softly. But there was no bite in it. "I'm not doing this for the court. I'm doing it because she's part of you." The waiting room of the pediatric ICU was a place where time went to die. The clock on the wall ticked with agonizing slowness. 1 hour, 2 hours, 5. The evil grandparents, the Harrisons, had arrived an hour in, but they stayed on the other side of the room, cowed by Victoria's presence and the security detail she had posted at the door. They looked small now, stripped of their legal weapons. Liam paced. He walked the length of the room until he knew every scuff mark on the linoleum. He thought about every moment he'd missed with Mia while working double shifts. He thought about the smiley face pinch she gave him. "Please God, take me instead. Just let her live." At hour 7, the double doors swung open. Dr. Aris, looking exhausted and still wearing his surgical scrubs, stepped out. He pulled his mask down, his expression was unreadable. Liam froze. He couldn't breathe. He felt Victoria step up beside him, her hand slipping into his. "Mr. Harper," the doctor said. "Is she?" Liam couldn't finish the sentence. "It was more complicated than we thought." "Drive," Aris said, rubbing his eyes, "and the valve collapsed completely before we could get her on the bypass. We lost her pulse for 2 minutes." Liam's knees buckled. Victoria caught him, wrapping her arm around his waist to hold him up, but the doctor continued, a small, tired smile breaking through. "She's a fighter, just like her dad, I hear. We managed to stabilize her. The new valve is in, and the heart is beating on its own, strong and steady." A sob broke from Liam's chest. A roar, guttural sound of relief that echoed through the quiet room. He buried his face in his hands, weeping openly. The soldier, who had faced death without blinking, finally broke down in the face of life. Victoria held him, tears streaming down her own face. She kissed his temple, whispering, "She made it. She made it. Underscore 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 underscore." 2 days later, the storm had passed. The sun was shining through the windows of the recovery room. Maya was awake, looking small and fragile in the big hospital bed, but the color was back in her cheeks. Liam sat in the chair next to her, reading a book. He looked 10 years younger. The weight was gone. "Daddy," Maya croaked, her voice raspy. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here," Liam said, putting the book down instantly. "Did you find a princess?" she asked sleepily. "For the date," Liam laughed, a genuine hearty sound. "I did, but she's not a princess. She's a queen and a bit of a dragon sometimes." "I heard that," Victoria said, walking in with a massive teddy bear that was bigger than she was. She placed the bear at the foot of the bed and smiled at Maya. "Hi, Maya, I'm Victoria." Mia looked at her with wide eyes. "You're pretty. Are you my daddy's girlfriend?" Victoria looked at Liam. The air in the room shifted. They hadn't talked about them since the kiss was interrupted. They had been surviving. Now it was time to live. "I don't know," Victoria said, her eyes locked on Liam. "That depends. He hasn't asked me on a second date yet. The first one was a bit of a disaster." Liam stood up. He walked around the bed. He took Victoria's hands. They were trembling slightly. "Victoria," he said, his voice deep and serious. "I am a janitor. I have a messy life. I come with baggage and medical bills and a past that haunts me." "I know," she said. "But," he continued, "I also come with loyalty. I will never let you fall. I will clean up every mess, fight every enemy, and fix every broken thing in your life if you let me." He reached into his pocket. He didn't have a ring. He had the plastic smiley face pin. Clears throat. "I don't have a diamond yet," he said, holding it out. "But this is the most valuable thing I own. It's luck, it's hope, and I want you to have it." Victoria looked at the cheap plastic toy. It was worth more than her entire company. She took it and pinned it to her silk blouse right over her heart. "I'd say that's a yes," she whispered. Liam pulled her in. This time there was no phone ringing, no elevator crashing, just the soft beep of the heart monitor, keeping a steady rhythm as he kissed her. It was a kiss that tasted of rain and relief and a future that neither of them had dared to imagine. The headline on Forbes magazine didn't read, "Scandal." It read, "The Power Couple. How Xanath's CEO and her security chief are revolutionizing the industry." But Liam didn't care about the magazine. He was in the backyard of a house, not a penthouse, but a real home with a yard and a tire swing. He was pushing Mir on the swing. She was laughing, her scar healing nicely under her shirt. On the porch, Victoria was watching them, sipping coffee. She wasn't wearing a power suit. She was wearing one of Liam's flannel shirts over her jeans. She looked happy. Liam stopped the swing and looked up at her. He waved. She waved back. He had spent his life defusing bombs, waiting for the explosion. But looking at his daughter laughing and the woman he loved smiling at him, Liam realized the truth. The explosion wasn't coming. The war was over. And for the first time in his life, the soldier had finally come home. So, what do you think? From a humiliated janitor to the savior of a billionaire CEO, Liam's story proves that you can never judge a man by the stains on his shirt. Victoria thought she wanted a rich executive, but she needed a protector. Liam thought he needed money, but he needed a partner who would fight for his daughter as hard as he did. In a world obsessed with status and wealth, this story is a powerful reminder that the most valuable skills aren't always found on a resume. Sometimes they are found in the heart of a father who refuses to give up. True love isn't about finding someone who fits your picture-perfect life. It's about finding someone who will hold the rope when your world is falling apart. If you enjoyed this emotional roller coaster of romance, karma, and redemption, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share this video with someone who needs a reminder that good guys do win in the end. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another heart-pounding story. See you in the next.